I touched on fasting. Is that something you do?
It can be a useful tool for people. It's not magic. You don't have to do it for weight loss. When looking at the research on what's called early time restricted feeding, I think that there are some potential metabolic benefits to come with eating an earlier dinner and not eating too late, into the evening. For one, because we're diurnal creatures, and so our metabolisms are primed to be at its
Hmm.
most fired up during the daytime hours. So we're most
Hmm.
insulin sensitive during the day. Our metabolisms are higher, right? And we
Yeah.
have these clocks. They're called peripheral clocks all around our bodies that are influenced by when we eat, right?
Hmm.
And so there's this thinking that eating too late at night can sort of cause asynchrony in these clocks, and it can lead to impaired glucose regulation, heightened blood pressure, which is not good. Um, and so I don't have like a hard and fast rule about fasting, but I do think it's generally better to eat an earlier dinner, by like 7, 8 p.m. And then uh, to not really eat, after that. The other thing about fasting that makes it a really powerful tool to improve weight, it's not more beneficial from a weight loss standpoint as just regular old calorie restriction. But if you think about the kinds of foods that most people eat in front of their TVs at night, like after dinner snacks tend to be carbs and fat. They tend not to be protein. They tend to
Yeah.
be junk
Nobody's
food.
snacking on like, filet strip, a chunk of filet.
Exactly. So if you adopt like an intermittent fasting protocol for yourself, right, and you skim off those 300 to 400 discretionary calories of like what you would normally eat while watching your favorite like Netflix show, chances are that's junk food, right?
Totally.
I think at the end of the day, like personal preference really does reign supreme. If you want to eat breakfast, then by all means eat breakfast. If you don't like eating breakfast, you don't have to eat breakfast. We're told by the food industry that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but I think that's really was meant just to sell cereal. There was a paper that came out that looked at the conflicts of interests among people who were invited to contribute to the 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans paper. Every 5 years, the experts get together, right? To
Yeah.
put, yeah, like the food pyramid, the
Yeah.
USDMI plate, every 5 years. So that in 2020, 95% of the committee members had conflicts of interest with pharma, with the food industry. Yeah, getting that bag, right? But like who suffers from that? Certainly not them. It's like the American people who just continue to get more and more confused, right? Being steered
Oh,
more and
yeah.
more away from ancestral foods like beef, eggs, fish, things like that, right? Organ meats,
Liver,
liver.
organ meats.
Yeah. And towards these high margin, low protein, ultra processed equivalents of like human pet food, essentially. That's what the standard American diet really is now comprised of primarily. And I think it's a huge problem. So the
Yeah.
nutrition science, to me, it's like obviously there's a lot of like really important work that's being done, so I don't want to undermine it completely, but in many ways it is a house of cards. And so I've just been very,
1,000%.
yeah, I've been very disillusioned by the whole endeavor, and I think it's really sad and messed up. And so that's why I just continue to do what I do, putting out the best information
Yeah.
that I can, in hopes of steering people in a different direction.
What would Max's food pyramid look like?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that at the base, I would definitely put high protein foods. I would put primarily animal products, but then I would also put like the higher protein plant foods for people who are,
So
you
is there
know,
a split in the middle?
yeah. But I mean, but most of it wouldn't be in the middle, because we know that animal protein is the highest quality protein that exists in nature. I think that animal fat is like great and beneficial to a point, but ultimately what I'm trying to do with my choices is to prioritize protein.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that the full bottom then?
I would say that's the bottom. Yeah. And then
Okay.
one layer up would be fibrous veggies. Like,
Like,
don't tell the carnivores, but I think that cruciferous vegetables are
oh,
great.
I want to talk about the carnivore situation.
Yeah. Just because like certain vegetables don't work for certain people doesn't mean that we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I like certain vegetables and I have no problem digesting them, and they're
Right.
they're great for me, right? So I think that the sort of one size fits all, like just eat more vegetables, that's not good advice either, because
Mm,
people like, some people have impaired gut function, right? They have
true.
they have
Yeah.
impaired microbiomes. So like you really do have to figure out what's going to work best for you.
So what do you use as the mechanism to decide what you should and shouldn't eat when it comes to vegetables then?
I think really it's subjective. It should be about how you feel, you know. It
Okay.
should be
So like
like
digestion, bloating, stuff like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like that's not fun, right? Nobody wants to
Right.
like if you dramatically increase your fiber consumption from one day to the next, you are going to feel, super bloated and feel, uncomfortable. And that's probably because you just haven't yet cultivated the like the microbiome, right? Like the bowel flora to contend with that sudden onslaught of fiber.
Mm.
But people who are consistently on high fiber diets, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying that everybody listening to this should go out and adopt a high fiber diet, but it's true that people that are on high fiber diets consistently, like they don't have those same kinds of symptoms. Like they adapt because they develop the gut flora to contend with that
Mm.
fiber. At the end of the day, though, fiber is not an essential nutrient. So I don't tend to push fiber more than I think a reasonable
Hmm.
amount to support gut health.
It's not essential, huh?
It's
So
not.
then if you like I would think of fiber and you think of regularity.
Yeah.
And so how do you stay regular if you don't have fiber in your diet? What are other triggers that keep things regular?
I don't think you need fiber. I mean, at this point, I've got some pretty close friends that do the carnivore diet, and when I ask them about their bathroom habits, they're like,
No
it's fine.
problem.
In fact, many of them have had like IBS. See, I
Yeah.
think that that's actually, I think potentially for people with gut problems, it can be a great elimination diet to to
Mm.
to adopt,
Super healing.
at least temporarily, because a lot of these like animal products, anybody who's ever had like a colonoscopy or any kind of like bowel procedure performed, what you're typically recommended is to go on a low residue diet for at least a few days before the procedure. And low residue foods are foods like beef, right?
Huh.
Eggs, white rice. These are the foods that are easily broken down and absorbed primarily in high up in the small intestine, right? When people have gut problems, like I think it's important for people to like every once in a while like check out their stool, right? And it's often the undigested food particles. It's not from animal like sourced
Mhm.
foods, right? It's like plants that their bodies didn't
Wow.
properly break
Yeah.
down, right? So I think
Totally.
for people with gut problems, it can be potentially very useful to do an elimination diet and get rid of plants for at least a time being, for at least a time, to allow their guts to heal, and then to bring those foods back eventually over time, one by one, to see what works for you and what doesn't.
What do you think like the top 5 vegetables should be then to be in that sort of next tier up,
Yeah.
in
Well,
your opinion? Because it's
I mean,
different for everybody, I get it, but, like, from nutritional standpoints, for micronutrients,
yeah.
um, vitamins, minerals, all that good stuff, what do you think the 5 big ones are?
Well, I would have to say for one, dark leafy greens, and I think kale can be. I happen to like kale, but I know that it can
Kale,
be
it's so divisive.
so divisive. Yeah, but I'm not recommending that. I'm saying that like I like it. I don't really have any major issue digesting it, but
Dave Asprey is just gonna burn you on this one.
I think arugula is phenomenal.
I love
Romaine
arugula.
lettuce, yeah. Mixed greens, all great, and super nutrient dense because they're rich in folate and vitamin C, but they provide very few calories, which
Yeah.
which increases their nutrient density, right, by definition. And we know that people who eat a bowl of dark leafy greens every day have more youthful brains, so brains
Huh?
that perform up to 11 years younger.
Huh.
Yeah, about a serving and a third, I believe, of dark leafy greens every day.
Wow.
Um,
That's becoming more and more important for people like us.
yeah, and yeah, super. And again, a very nutrient dense food. And so, like, whatever your favorite dark leafy green is, by all means, go
Okay.
for it. Yeah, iceberg
Okay.
lettuce doesn't count.
No, totally not. It's just water.
Yeah.
So dark leafy greens, that's one.
Well, I would probably put like fruit there as well, like in that.
Fruit goes in the vegetable category. Okay.
Yeah, like in this. I mean, I guess we could divide that. Like, well, fruits and vegetables like berries and avocados. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
are olives. Berries, avocados, and olives are amazing fruits.
Ah.
Very like good data on them. Also
Love
cacao.
those.
Cacao is also a fruit. Mushrooms are good.
Oh,
Alliums are great.
what are
Um,
alliums?
so garlic, leeks, onions,
Oh,
shallots, those are all alliums. Great source of prebiotic fiber.
yeah, that's
Um,
why I get leeks. I didn't know why though. I just
yeah,
heard it and I was like, "Ooh, get leeks. It's a prebiotic."
leeks are bomb.
Jicama?
Jicama's great. I love jicama. Um, I happen to love fennel. You know, it's
I
like
love fennel.
yeah.
It's
Do
my
you?
favorite. I love, love, love fennel. I
Do you like
make
it
salads
raw?
with arugula. I love it raw.
Yeah, me
Yep. I
too.
don't cook it. It's always raw.
Same.
Arugula and fennel and radicchio and those are like the base ingredients.
Yeah, so freaking good. Like I'm obsessed. See, I think that a lot of these carnivores, they grew up with like parents that just didn't know how to cook vegetables properly, you know? So they were the kids that grew up on they had like their whatever their diet was at 12 years old, you know, they've just stuck with. And they learned at a certain point that hot dogs weren't good for them, but in general, it's like, you know, they're grossed out by the idea of eating vegetables. But I grew up my mom was largely vegetarian and knew how to season vegetables properly, would put a ton of salt and garlic on them. And so I grew up really enjoying veggies.
Yeah, I agree. It's the preparation of them. And like
Yeah.
the argument on that side would be like, would you eat it if it didn't have anything on it? You know? And I'm like, kind of. Kind of. Okay, so we've got like meat of all kinds, including fish, I'm sure,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Proteins.
Yep.
Then you've got fruit, vegetables. What's next? Are we to wine yet? Because if we're not to like chocolate and wine, I just,
Chocolate, we could put chocolate on the third tier. I would put like extra virgin olive oil maybe on the third tier as
yeah.
well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
It's not a nutrient dense food, but I think it is a functional food in many ways.